I was actually in Silicon Valley, and then I asked my friends, what are you going to do this afternoon? He's like, oh, I'm going to play around with ChatGPT. Like, this is a grown, I didn't even know what it was. And like, this is a grown man. Like, what the heck? So then I went to his place and we were baking some cookies, and he's like, let me show you. And he lets it, it just literally came out, right? And he lets it write a poem about me. And I looked at this and I'm like, is this a prank? Like, what is that for real? And then the next day I spent the whole day trying to write a complete book from beginning to the end with ChatGPT and the DALL-E. And I called it Hello Doctors because I wanted to show my doctor colleagues that, you know, this is what's happening right now. Getting pretty obsessed on day one.
Hi, my name is Marius. I'm a designer in a studio here in Germany, and together with Nik and today our guest Sven, we discuss psychological, personal and regular skills that will help you advance your work with AI.
Hi, my name is Nik and I'm a software developer. Today, Sven Jungmann is with us and we will talk about AI in medicine, AI for people, AI skills you will need because the world is changing, so you have to.
And hi, thanks for having me. I'm Sven. I'm a medical doctor originally, and after a couple of years working at the cold face of medicine, I ended up in digital innovation, and today I'm a founder of an AI company for healthcare. I'm also on the investor side as an advisor or an angel, and I look at everything at the intersection of evidence-based medicine, business, and digital and AI.
Welcome, Sven. Nice to see you. Thanks for taking the time to join us. Maybe in the beginning, before we jump on this topic, maybe you want to do a short introduction for the listeners.
Well, thank you. I'm a medical doctor originally, and I have worked in a hospital for a while. Then I moved out into sort of the whole digital innovation space. I had a stint in hardware, which was tough. And now I'm back into digital. And on the side, so this is my founder story basically. And then on the side, I'm on the investor side as an angel, as a advisory board member of Speed Invest, and look at sort of other people's dreams and ideas and how we can support them.
Great. Lots of great experiences also with the hardware. I think we will tap into that later again. And software and medical background.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. So maybe let's line out today's topic. What do we want to talk about? Mm-hmm. Mostly this podcast is about like psychological and personal topics, skills that people can use at work, at home, in their private lives. And with AI being hyped so much, and you also using it already, applying it to projects in your work, we're very curious to hear about like your experiences when it comes to the skills that people will need in the future. Mm-hmm. Teams, developers, founders, but also people in their general lives that are really helpful and give them an advantage using an AI. I think that's a topic we want to dive into. And I think first questions we can start with basically, do you remember a moment, doesn't have to be the first one, but where you kind of realized yourself that, okay, this is AI. This is really helpful for me. You kind of try to apply it. I'd be curious to hear.
Oh, yeah. Actually, 2 days ago, I met up with some of the doctors that I used to work with in the hospital, and I was an early leaver. And at the time, people didn't understand why I would go. And we reflected a little bit on that. And one of the senior doctors that I'm now actually going to do a pretty interesting project with, he said, I think you left too early, but now I understand why. And sort of now it makes sense. And I think it's so true. Because I was chasing visions that were a little bit mad a few years ago, and now they're completely within reach, and it's completely sensible to do it. It was just way too early. And you keep hearing all of these things, you know, like timing is like such a crucial aspect. But it's so hard to figure out when the right timing is. And now it's like in hindsight, I can really see how I was just too optimistic previously. My first moment was, I was actually in Silicon Valley, meeting up with some friends, and we had I think like a Halloween kind of, or was it Halloween, Thanksgiving kind of thingy with friends. And then I asked my friends, what are you going to do this afternoon? He's like, oh, I'm going to play around with ChatGPT. Like, this is a grown, I didn't even know what it was. And like, this is a grown man. Like, what the heck? And so then I went to his place and we were baking some cookies, and he's like, let me show you. And he lets it, it just literally came out, right? And he lets it write a poem about me. And I looked at this and I'm like, is this a prank? Like, what is that for real? And then the next day I spent the whole day trying to write a complete book from beginning to the end with ChatGPT and the DALL-E. And I called it Hello Doctors because I wanted to show my doctor colleagues that, this is what's happening right now. So it's getting pretty obsessed on day one.
Nice. Great experience. That's really great. Like also from the beginning right away. I think Nik, maybe we've talked about these. Like, do you also have like one of these moments?
Well, absolutely. I'm actually using AI for development, but yeah, there was a moment at some point that I started to chat with ChatGPT back then when they opened and asked some simple questions at the beginning to solve a certain programming issue and so. And I was impressed how fast and neat was the outcome. Maybe because the experience that some tool talks to you like human, this was something very new at that moment. And you felt like somebody else is sitting on the other side of the screen and actually helping you, consulting you, and that's make a huge difference and inspiration.
I think it's a very special moment. Like a lot of people compare this to electricity or other very basic technologies that has come along and really change things very fast. It's kind of like history is written while we do things. We can reflect on things very fast and see how it works. So it's an interesting topic, and I think it was very nice that you found the time to talk to us because you use it in your daily work, medical work, software work. And I think there are certain skills that have always been like sought after when you hire people or you work with people. Things like, being clear in the way you work, organized, or being able to define certain tasks or scenarios. And I think if I just for myself, the first moment that I really had, it was like, back then when I was in NVIDIA doing these tests of like machine learning for images. And I kind of had this magical moment where I was like, being a designer, I was of course interested in the visual parts. And I just did this very simple drawing, right? Like he just made this sketch of like two tops for the mountain and like a small circle for the lake. And within like half a second, there is this 3D rendering of a beautiful sea. And that I think is like maybe 5-10 years ago, something like that, where it was not called yet AI, but more like machine learning in terms of learning the imagery. And I thought like, okay, well, I mean, like we had the companies doing productions for this, like budgets being big, a long time developing the scene, what's the shading, how does it look like? So it's been a right process. Yeah, exactly. Lots of topics to this, like to think about or consider, just like in the work that we do or like how we approach. And I think at that moment when I then started now using Perplexity or being some of this myself, I realized like being very clear on what you want to do, defining what you actually want to do with it is kind of one of those skills. But just an idea, like I would be most curious to hear what you see, which kind of skills other than could be valuable for people.
I've asked myself that question quite often, so I'm also curious to hear what you think of it. The way I'm just starting a new company again, founded, 2 months ago, and we're already raising quite nicely after 7 months of bootstrapping. So I wanted to really figure out what it is before I take some money in. And then, of course, I mean, the first question you get is, okay, what's your financial plan? Like, who do you plan to hire? And the first answer is, I don't know, because I have no idea who I will need in the next, maybe the next 6 months I know, but then afterwards, first of all, I don't know what machines will be able to do, where I might not need a human anymore, honestly. And on the other side, I might not even know any of the requirements. So there's a big debate on how, and you're much more knowledgeable about this, but how our interface is going to change. So we have MCP and APIs between our backend and the frontend so that we can exchange it from visual to audio to, I don't know, whatever is going to come. And we have to design for, not design in the classical design sense, but like in like a company structuring sense for maximum flexibility because things are changing so fast. And that then reflects back to the skills. So I rarely use a lawyer. I'm not getting a full-time lawyer on board, but more for his operational skills. But I do a lot of that with Claude. Somebody sends me an LOI or I don't know, whatever it is, I let it check by that first. And I think that already has saved me since inception of the company around 60, 70K in legal fees. we are prototyping not anymore with Figma, but with V0. And I show that to people. So, previously I would maybe come to you with, I want to do this and I like blue shades. And then you'd be like, okay, so I'm starting from scratch. Now I want to come to you and say, look, we've run these 25 prototypes and this is the feedback we've gotten from people. And this is my exact challenge, which really needs like an intellectual effort to really think about the human experience behind it. And not the basics of, do I put the button up here? And does this have enough contrast to be like accessible? And these basic, that's pretty much gone. So I need you for the like more complex, high level thinking, which has to do a lot with understanding the people properly. But then I can also feed you the right information because I've done all the first iterations. And so when I now hire people, what I'm interested in is rate of learning. So how fast are they willing to completely change the way they think? The second thing is skill in interacting with humans. So all of the people-facing stuff, which means in my case, we're talking to nurses, to doctors, to patients, all levels of education, all backgrounds, different fears. And you have to be good with that. And that's not something you can just delegate to a machine, of course. And I'm really interested in sort of creativity in using emerging technologies. And I've been helping out a friend with his company and, worked a bit with his team on different topics. And I was so surprised how many like very young people, sort of just a few years out of university, just completely refuse to use AI. And I feel like if you don't use it for 3 to 4 hours a day, like you're losing out. You're just not going to make it because A, you're completely under delivering versus what other people do. B, you're not learning how to use these tools and you're missing the boat. So I'm getting very worried. And I see so many people just pretending it's not there, or they come up with, oh no, but the CO2 footprint is too high. I'm just going to use my own brain and so on. It's go for it. The rest of the world's not going to wait for you.
Yeah.
It's interesting, Sven, your experience with these AI things. And at the moment, what I see is that you use it for bootstrapping, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, to start something, to build some proof of concept, prototypes, whatever. And I'm using AI also for a few years already. I'm a software developer. I'm using AI for different verticals, for different like subjects. I'm creating contents for my social media using help of AI. I'm creating training materials using AI because all this fits a lot. So if I need to create a new training materials, it's like a bootstrap. I need to prepare some programming challenge for people. Totally makes sense, totally helps a lot when you use some Cloudeo or Cursor for that or something like this. But I also experience the following, Sven. Whenever the company or this endeavor that you start turns into a bigger picture where we already start talking about not bootstrapping, not startupping, not burning the cash of somebody else like venture capital, but where it comes already for a company to really continue making money, things becomes complex with AI, way more complex. And actually I wanted to reference here the Dora research from 2026. I will attach it somewhere in the description of this episode, that they claim that actually the delivery drops for 7% when people adopting AI. Maybe because it requires a learning leap for people to adopt it, maybe. But also in software development explicitly, when the code is complex, when the code is legacy, you employ the AI and it is not accurate. You need to babysit prompts until you come up to the good resolution. Yeah. Reviews of the code becomes more complex because there is a lot of clutter in that in comparison to a human who would write it maybe slower. And this is why there is a decrease at such a level. So I understand prototyping, bootstrapping, totally 100%, I'm for that. But on the complex, in my experience, on the complex systems, it's a very different picture where AI still needs to grow.
I agree 100%. And we have analogies to that in medicine. So there was a recent study where they looked at how well do doctors perform on complicated cases that have not been published before, that, you might have different diagnoses in the end, and it's not trivial, but they're also not outrageously rare and so on. So something where you would say a senior doctor should be able to handle it. Doctors performed well in 72% of the cases. Guess how well AI did? What do you think?
10%.
94%, 92,
Oh, yeah.
92%.
Okay.
And then the question is AI plus doctors.
You would assume it's also higher, but
74%.
okay, 74. I would have guessed like 90. Yeah.
So the doctors actually really reduced the performance, and then there are a lot of explanations for it. Part of it is, as you say, they didn't know how to use it. They were asking it like Google, hey, what would be other diagnoses for, like, I don't know, fever, something like this, rather than just pasting the whole case and say, hey, give me pros and cons for like the top 5 different high likelihood diagnosis or something like this, right? They didn't know how to use it often. Fair enough. But there was another thing, which was they often said, I don't believe the AI based on my long-standing experience or based on my intuition, which is like, you expect AI to be highly explainable by the EU AI Act and everything. And that's the response you get from doctors on high-stakes decisions, right? So in a way, like, we're not really fair in how we how we have the bar. But I think interestingly is that now there is a big debate at a very high level, like top thought leaders in the healthcare space, where they say, we always thought that the role of AI will be the assistant of the doctor, kind of like a co-pilot, but the doctor is always in the loop and always in the steering wheel. We now have to challenge that assumption based on the data, the evidence that we see. And we have to think that maybe it's more of a divide and conquer strategy. So there are things where AI is just going to be fundamentally better, and where humans, for the time being right now, stay better. I don't know enough about coding to really, like make a suitable comparison. But what I'm hearing is that letting it code for you in sort of like one piece of it, letting it autofill parts or maybe even help you find bugs in one document is great for the AI, probably far better in many cases than most humans. But when it comes to this complexity of sort of cross-linking different files and all of this, this is, as of today, where the humans are strong. So what I've done, I've hired one very senior software developer, and then we're working with freelancers to do most of sort of the core work where you still need humans. I would not get a junior on board today, because my worry would be that they're not going to solve the problem, the gap that needs to be filled with what the AI can do at the moment. And so I think that's something we need to revisit every 4 weeks, because it's just like a baby, like yesterday the thing couldn't walk. Suddenly it's like, hey, Papa, and it's riding towards you. And like, what happened? And so, I think it's a discussion that we constantly have to have of where's the divide and conquer exactly, where's the delineation.
Yeah, very interesting. I think like 2 points I want to pick up. Nice discussion, exactly where we wanted to go to. So first point is, like you mentioned before, you're very worried about education. It's one topic I want to pick up, because exactly what you just mentioned, the situation you have, you need experienced senior people on the team, because on the one level, you need to be able to define what needs to be done, dissect things, and then really delegate very well if you want to use AI, which a junior can do, because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the vocabulary to do that yet. And on the other hand, those people who will at some point retire or maybe go into another scenario, becoming a head of or lead the team, will phase out. And then what's going to happen? So I think this morning I just listened to a podcast from New York Times about education with AI and same discussion. So there's one like polarity saying, okay, let's not use AI in school, shut off. Australia is banning phones, is banning social media. Okay, one way to go. Others totally embrace it, which I thought very cool. An example they gave is that there are schools which have studios. And the studio basically is a space where the student can define themselves how they want to match the criteria of the school. So school has kind of their curriculum and the things they need to learn. And the students can say, I'm picking a topic where I want to do these things. So for example, one is like a history lesson, and the girl said she's going to do a panic room. And in the panic room, she's going to do the story of Napoleon as a panic room scenario, which I think was pretty cool, a very creative way of doing this. And then, of course, she started using ChatGPT and Midjourney, studying out the whole thing, learning about the history. And she kind of like was really having the spark of doing education the way she wants to do. So I think that's kind of like two polarities, like very one-sided, other-sided. But yeah, I mean, that's the situation. And I think like the more I think about it, also big situation in yours and mine. Coding, when we say we don't know so much about it, the more I learn about coding, it's language, being able to talk in that language, talk to other people. So being able to define certain things and describe them. But yeah, I'm also worried. I'm curious to see like what you guys think. Nik works with devs, junior devs. What's your take on this?
Maybe I could share some problems that currently people face, especially developers, when interacting with AI and they employing GitHub Copilot or chat-based interfaces like consultants or maybe even Cursor IDE. The developers, they used to be in a solo mode. They are normally given a task, they communicate while the task is there to clarify some things, and then they are on their own to execute on that task to complete it. And within years, this kind of solo mode for developer reduce the opportunity to learn communication. And therefore, the communication skills are weak. And this directly impacts the outcome that AI produces when you communicate with that. We are weak at writing prompts. We are weak at formulating what we need. We are weak at these things. And therefore, the quality of output is not what we want from the AI. We are used to this famous statement from Steve Jobs. Click, boom, amazing, But now we have to formulate what we want. We want to explain somebody, the computer, actually, what will be the input, what is expected outcome for that. And this is difficult, at least for developers and people in my niche.
Very interesting. I think it really comes to this, like one big part of using AI is evaluations, like evals to tell it what it needs to do. Yeah, it's curious. I mean, like you are really there. Like it's great examples you brought, Sven, like with legal that you mentioned, also like evaluating things on a monthly basis. Maybe you can tell us when it comes to actually building the product, like with different people on the team. How do you approach it with AI? How does it work?
We're doing everything by the book. Like if you've read all of the major like startup literature and you follow all the, I don't know, Y Combinator tips and so on, you will figure out quite quickly how we do it. And so I've like 30% of my time I spend talking to the people who are our end users, which are doctors, nurses, therapists, the people who do the coding, so not the software coding, but sort of billing afterwards for insurance, and hospital managers and sort of the whole spectrum of people who are involved in patient care. And I mean, largely I just listen to them or I watch them and then I ask them about questions about things that I observed, and just to get like a very deep understanding of like the typical things. What are the workflows? What are the frictions? What are the jobs to be done? Like all of this. And then I use AI on every single stage in that value creation process, if you will. So before I go into this hospital, for example, let's say I want to figure out what a hospital needs. Before I go there, I look at all the disciplines, and I'm using Anthropic quite a lot, so I'm rotating between these to get different experiences. And you can set up projects, and then in the projects you can put a lot of documents. So I feed it with all that there is to know about what we do, and then I say, hey, I'm now going to this hospital, and these are the specialties that they have. What do you think are the most likely problems? And I let it do deep research on it. And then I scrape all of the Google reviews that they have. And then I analyze the 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, 5-star feedbacks. And I just say, now compare them to me. Give me what are the things people don't like about this hospital, or the people who give high recommendations and how are they different from the others and so on, so on, so on. So I come super prepared before I even enter this hospital because I have a pretty clear idea. But then I don't really drop that. So I'm more as you would normally do, right? I'm trying to not bias people, but I know quite a lot already, which previously, I don't know, would have been way too time consuming. And then many of the meetings I record, so I transcribe and I can summarize them, which saves me a lot of time. And then I let that to be turned into like a job to be done description and tell me the biggest concerns and barriers and so on that they see. I listen to podcasts or I let podcasts be transcribed where, for example, they interview innovative doctors. And often these doctors have their own workarounds and then they have challenges with these workarounds. And sometimes I don't even listen to the podcast and just like, let me know what this guy did, what's the job to be done, what is the problem they're trying to solve, and why does it not really work? Because often it doesn't, because it's just them doing it on the side. And so I'm collecting a lot of that information to really get deep user insights. And then I feed that back to my tech team to have a check-in on like, do you see any things here that, that jump to your mind where you feel like this is a very easy solution or there's something that could be complicated? How does that fit into what we're building? And so on. And once I've done that, then I go into the solution space where I basically say, look, these are the problems, jobs to be done. This is what we're doing. This is the input from my tech team. Sort of please create for me like a concept. And then sometimes I do a user journey and add on all of these things. And then I give that back to the customer and I say, from everything I learned, this is my observation. What do you think of it? And then they give me feedback on that. And then it's already very, very ripe, I think. And meanwhile, the team is V0ing and Lovabling and I don't know what, to create some mock-ups and so on. Then we discuss the user journeys and had a lot of misunderstandings often because I wasn't clear on like where exactly it starts. And so, but this is like resolved in a matter of like a couple of, I don't know, quarters of an hour. And then I bring that back. And so we have this rapid iteration, but the quality jump between each iteration is just so much higher than it was before. So I think that's largely it. And then of course, like in medicine, everything is super regulated. So then I'm like, okay, now we've done all of this, but the health insurance, overarching health insurance society, the federation basically has these and these requirements. Can you please match it against that? Is this compliant? What do we need to do there? And so on and so on and so on. And that also adds a lot of quality because previously I just wouldn't be able to really assess these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I think if that was a ChatGPT answer, it would be pretty long.
Sorry.
Thanks a lot. No, this is great. I mean, in a positive way, because that means you have a lot of knowledge. Like you've gained a lot of knowledge over the years. We mean in a positive way because it's very detailed and I think it's great. So many tools you use, so many processes very much enabled by this. And you just mentioned traffic, so I don't want to go through tools. But yesterday they released this kind of, I think it's a 7 or 8 episode course about AI literacy. It's really nice. We can share the link in the description later. And if I kind of like listen to you, you already do this. Like this is great. They kind of at a model of these 4Ds you can listen to in the course and check it out later. But one topic that you brought up, which I want to pick up on, is like discerning what you get as a result from the tool. And I think that's kind of what they try to do. Like they really figure out things. You define the step first, which you did greatly. Like you have a lot of experience in medical with the teams, with the doctors. There's lots of layers, right? Like psychologically. Just first sentence you said, you dropped it. And for other people, I think that's quite a long process to do. Being able how to talk to the doctor, not revealing things, not biasing them, like lots of steps that you are aware of. But then I think like the discerning part, I'm curious because Nik also mentioned this and he's, as far as I know, quite a fan of TDD, test-driven development, where you write tests beforehand. And I'm curious about from your side, Nik, because we see those things kind of converging. Do you see parallels from Sven's side, from your sides? What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that what I liked about Sven's approach, how he reduces the time for a next iteration. Without AI, you would need much more time to do research, investigation, find out things, and he reduces that so he can make another iteration faster. And this probably will lead to the product development much faster place. So yeah, I would say that this is really cool. In test-driven development approach, the important part is to formulate the outcomes actually, and then obviously you will implement against these formulations, against these tests. So this similar kind of line we can put there, that we are trying to make sure that we could come up with a right formulation of the outcome of what we need, how the software should behave, and then AI could help us to fulfill this. So let's say in such a term that first with my team, I build a contract in a form of high-level tests where we explicitly capture how the customer interacts with the software and what the outcomes, what the customer see, what the customer clicks, what happens afterwards. And whenever this is ready, this contract could be passed to AI, or AI could be employed to fulfill it, to implement it. And when the tests, these high-level tests pass, then obviously it means that we fulfill the contract. The contract is done now, okay? So this is, I think, the approach of the future development, how it will be. But you will need a human who will formulate and set up this expectation, what at the end we will need, okay? Before we pass it to the AI to make it work.
Some factors I think we learned from this, which is great: skills, communication skills on both sides, where Sven is spending around 30% of his time talking to clients, talking to AI, discerning things, like understanding them, reviewing them, putting them to good use, reducing a lot of time. I think repetitive tasks where you can automate them, use AI is great, also for Nik's sides. And I think looking at this, taking it away from this, from my side, I can say Vercel, you mentioned it a few times, is not our sponsor, but BCO, wait, as tool for UI design also helps us a lot. Yeah, I mean, we could have another discussion about education, which I would be happy to have.
Likewise.
At some point. But it was great to having you, first the guest on the show. So thanks a lot for taking time in being with us.
Likewise.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sven. To finish this episode, maybe it would worse to say that AI is disrupting the world. Every discipline is affected. Startups, software development, design, everything is there. Everything is available through AI now.